So here we are, the last morning of the crash course, which is run by Chris and Becca Martenson and their colleague Adam. The basis of the course is what's available on their webpage, chrismartenson.com. And during these days we're expanding on different aspects, more practical nature. What is the logistics that one, as a private person, will need to deal with, both logistically and also socially, psychologically. The first issues will be answered and commented on by Chris, and Becca will come in the next video to comment on the psychological and social issues. So, Chris,
yes.
You are pretty sure that there will be a major shift.
Absolutely.
You are.
Yes.
Not everybody is convinced. Why are you so convinced?
It's a simple extrapolation looking at how many people we've got on the planet, how fast we're consuming resources, where we are in the oil story, and where we are in the money printing story. Once you put all three of these sets of data together, and this gets out of my realm of my opinion, back just into data, and we look at how much longer certain things can last at current rates of consumption, we can just say they cannot continue to be consumed at ever-increasing rates of consumption. They just simply don't exist. That alone is a major change.
Okay. And you talk about exponential growth in all these three, the economy, the ecology, and also in energy. And all these together is very well explained, very pedagogically, in the webpage of Chris Martenson. So, once one accepts this possibility of major change, maybe even collapse, and some people would say, where do you think it might happen on Earth, and in which one of these three E's?
It always happens in the weaker places first. We're going to expect the changes to start from the outside in. So we've already seen this in Europe with the weaker member states falling off the vine first, right? So Greece, and then we're going to watch for Portugal potentially next, and then Italy, Spain. Everybody's very familiar with that story now, but that is a larger metaphor for how this is all going to unfold. We would expect to see the weaker areas really let go first. So in my own country of the United States, we see this in rising food stamp usage, which means that the people who are lower down on the socioeconomic bracket are really getting hurt very hard by $4 a gallon gasoline here and by lower economic conditions. So this is how I expect things to progress. It's kind of from the outside in. And my favorite possible triggering event that really gets this ball rolling in a new direction is going to be the international recognition of peak oil.
Okay.
Yep, sometime around 2013 is my preferred timing, but that could be off by a few years either way. But we already know that we're past peak cheap and easy oil. That's been admitted even by the most diehard skeptics of the theory. I'm putting quotes up because it's not a theory. Peak oil is an observation, not a theory. When it's going to arrive is a theory, but we already know as a fact that cheap and easy oil is in the rearview mirror, and it's only a matter of time before all growth in oil is in the rearview mirror. And that moment, I think, is when we get a very, the potential for a flashpoint. Because all that has to happen is for one major exporting country to make the decision to nationalize that resource, not export it anymore, preserve it for its own citizens' use rather than scattering it to the world's markets in exchange for ones and zeros and hard disks, which is what we call money these days, right? And that's all that's going to be required to really kick this story to a new level, because then we'll have really high prices of oil, and at that point, the whole story of global growth falls apart. And when the growth story falls apart, our asset markets fall apart, stocks and bonds in particular.
Okay. And so when this hits the economic fan, then some people say, most people say there will be inflation, if not hyperinflation. And then there are some that claim that no, it will be deflation. What's your comment?
I very heavily lean towards inflation. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Of the two routes, right? Both of them, if we're going to have to fall off of this precipice, knife edge, and we're going to either fall down deflation or inflation. Deflation, if we study that, we say, what would happen? Our major financial institutions would go up in smoke. Pension funds would be destroyed. Political careers would be ruined. The portfolios of the wealthiest class just get eviscerated and destroyed. There are a lot of human pressures to say, let's avoid deflation if we can. Now, what would be required for us to go down inflation? Well, in times past, a long time ago, you had to clip the coins or debase the currency, hard process, call it all in, reformulate it, put it back out. Later, we got fancier. We could run printing presses like happened in Weimar, Germany. Now all that's required is somebody sits down at a keyboard and puts a few extra zeros on the end of something. And so when we look at that process, creating additional money in our system happens at the speed of light with a few keystrokes. It's very easy to do. So given massive economic destruction, possibly social unrest, chaos, wars, all kinds of things that could result from deflation, or trying a little inflation, we're going to try a little inflation. Since the crisis broke 3 years ago, all we've seen is that magic keystrokes and money being created out of thin air. So we're already down the path of inflation at this point.
Okay, so you say the shift is really here already.
They're putting as much money as they can in to sort of keep this whole system upright.
Yeah.
And they're putting more and more money in. My prediction is they're going to do what inevitably happens. This is like trying to turn a super tanker. You spin the wheel a bunch, but it takes a long time for the nose to come around. Once it starts to come around, you can turn the wheel back the other way all you want. It's still going to keep coming around. This is what central banks have always done. They always oversteer and understeer. It's very hard throwing money into economy to get it to behave like you want because it's a complex system. It does what it wants to do. So they're throwing more and more money in, and my prediction is they'll keep throwing it in until they see the nose coming around. And at that point, it'll be too late. They can stop putting money in all they want, but that nose is going to continue to swing. And that swinging of the nose is inflation.
Okay, good. So, would you have 3 tips, please, on actions for the person that hasn't come about to really act personally?
This is in times of really big change, which is what we're going to be coming on. And let me be clear. Change could be disruptive. It could also be very positive. But it'll be positive, better chance, if individuals are prepared for that moment. And 3 things that you can do to prepare, which are, I think, just make eminent sense almost in any environment, but particularly in this one. First is to be out of debt as much as possible. Debt is a limiting factor. We just saw Angela Merkel explain to the German citizenry that debts really constrain a country's options and really puts it in a prison, as it were. And that's true for us as individuals. So I think being out of debt gives you the most options you possibly can. So as much as possible, pay down debts. Don't go further into debt, particularly for consumption. No debts for holidays, right? The second is to get some gold, some precious metals, maybe some silver too. Simply because when we look at how much money is being printed, this is a wise thing to do. Historically, says this would be good. And then the third thing is to make physical preparations, particularly those that will insulate you, make you more resilient to rising food and energy prices. So this would be maybe insulating your home a little better, maybe getting some solar thermal panels on for hot water, finding a way to live closer to work if possible, getting transportation that's much more fuel efficient, planting a garden. These are all good things that will deliver you healthier food and maybe a healthier lifestyle anyway. And if in the future oil prices double, where your neighbors will be paying a lot more of their disposable income for these things, you'll be paying less, puts you in a slightly better position, and that resilience, I think, will make all the difference to your future sense of well-being.
And I would like you to mention the webpage because it's got a lot of additional information. We
have a lot of content, a lot of information on the website. So right now it's chrismartenson.com, and last name, very Swedish, Martenson.com. And on there, one place I would direct people is the Crash Course, which is the video series that explains how these 3 E's, the economy, energy, and environment, all come together into this story of change. And then a second thing is we have what's called a What Should I Do series, which explains some basic steps people can take for these resilience pieces that we talked about on physical preparation.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Jackie, my pleasure.